to get started. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We are back, and we've got our final speaker to bring us home. Is again, I like talk about being blessed with great friends. Every one of these speakers have not only just been professionally colleagues of mine, but just incredible friends personally too. And absolutely no less of that is Dantris Brown. He is the executive director of the Edge Center for Career Development at Randolph-Macon College, and one of the co-founders of Brown Baylor also, who, just to give them some extra props, is one of the forces behind the Arthur Ashe Boulevard name change last year. But just an incredible guy, and just really going to bring us home with how to turn this stuff into action and really pull in your passion. So, Dantris, I'm going to mute and let you take it, and you just give me cues, and I'll change slides as we go.
That's perfect. Thanks, Dean. And I appreciate being involved in this. 365, you guys, you all are doing a wonderful job with our students in regards to internships. So I got to make sure that I plug that. I'm feeling really excited about the conversations that we've already had. Deanna did an amazing job around the messaging. I loved David's component of the foundational elements of fundraising and how all of that plays. And so, my take in this is just basically how to take those two things and then really make it a reality. And so I'm basing this off of a project we worked on last year in regards to the Arthur Ashe Initiative. But it ties into a lot of the conversation that we're having, mostly built around your purpose, living with purpose, living with generosity, and living with an intentionality to actually make a difference. You'll see on the screen right now, I've started this tradition. Dean has seen this many times before, in which I dedicate each presentation that I give to someone that's important to me. And this presentation is dedicated to Dino, who was the first Black male educator that I had in my career. I didn't have him until 1998. I graduated high school in 1991, so you all can do the math. I did not have one male Black educator until 1998. And he was pivotal in my development because I just admired him and everything that he was about as a Black man, as a graphic designer, as someone that's making influence. So this presentation is dedicated to him. Dean, if you want to go to the next page. So one of the things I want to talk about is as we start to get into our nonprofit life and what we're doing, it's all about action. And you can go to the next page. And so a lot of times you get into a situation to where maybe you're not financially there. Maybe you don't think you're there from a career experience standpoint. Maybe you feel like you have the resources or things like that. But one of the things that Arthur Ashe always stood on was start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. And that's basically, once you get the mission and message, once you align that, once you understand the fundamentals of fundraising, then you just start where you are, no matter where that is in your particular situation. Next page, please, Dean. And so one of the things that we talk about a lot of is understanding what your purpose is. And David touched on it tremendously. Deanna touched on it tremendously. And I'm just going to add an exclamation to this. So we have to understand that our moral and personal values cannot be jeopardized. Identify what you're purposeful about. Identify what you're passionate about. Identify what means important things to you. Now, the thing about this is you must be open to shaping the world by creating a more inclusive culture, one that moves past assumptions and generalizations. So we challenge each of us to find their purpose and follow that, but also being flexible in regarding what that purpose is, and then making sure that it is put forth to something that is more inspiring to moving past those assumptions and generalizations. one of the things that we went through in regards to the Arthur Ashe Initiative was it really wasn't about renaming the boulevard. It was about everything that Arthur Ashe stood for that aligned with what I stood for, that aligned with what everyone within our organization stood for. And then it also inspired a culture of inclusiveness that was ridiculous. When we sat down and started to think about what are we going to do with this and how are we going to do it, as we're speaking with David Harris, who is Arthur Ashe's nephew, we knew that we were going to get some challenges. And we knew that there was a baseline within our moral and personal values that we could not jeopardize. But we also had to be certain that we were open to adjusting to what the world was asking for, to what our city was asking for. And so despite all of the pushback that we got from that, and there were many, we didn't let that jeopardize anything because our focus was on something bigger than ourselves. Our focus was on the foundation in which Arthur Ashe lived on. And so as you start to think about the organizations you want to be a part of, as you start to think about the situations within your communities that are important to you and how they fit within your moral and personal values, make sure that you begin to move with an intentional action to follow that purpose. But also using that leverage to create a more inclusive culture that moves past all the assumptions and generalizations that make this world a better place. Next page, please, Dean. As we went through this and we started to find out, one of the things in regards to not only nonprofits, but in specifically to this program, is once we identified what our purpose was and how we wanted to follow that, and then the action that we put behind it, we wanted to make sure that we were living with purpose, and then living generously, which means serving others more than serving ourselves. Okay. And so, Dean, on the next page, you'll see one of the quotes that was really inspiring to us. And as we continue to move in our world of nonprofit and what we're doing in the community, is it's not the urge to surpass others at whatever cost, but the urge to serve others at whatever cost. And that is a powerful statement of identifying what you're purposeful about and then being able to use that from a purposeful action standpoint and give to others. Next page, please, Dean. So when we talk about this and how we do this, every ounce of who you are must be relentless in the pursuit of giving to others. There's just no exception. And candidly, when we talk about the nonprofit world and what that encompasses, there's a lot of sweat equity involved in that. There's a lot of extra commitment that you have to continually be relentless about to support that. We talked earlier in David's session in regards to the LinkedIn platform and the announcement of being a part of something. Every ounce of who you are must be relentless in the pursuit of giving to others. So making that known and then accepting and embracing all dimensions of ideas to shape breakthrough thinking and encourage a culture of equality. That's what we do from a nonprofit standpoint. That's what we're all about. And that's what's important about being involved in purposeful organizations, because we are not only doing this just because it's something that needs to be done. We're doing this because it's our responsibility to give back to others, because they've done it for us. I definitely wouldn't be here without it. And so, as we started to think about, moving forward with this, with the Arthur Ashe Initiative and really getting involved in this, the energy of our Richmond community, being able to identify and own the responsibility of making cultural change was phenomenal. And what I mean by that is The rename of the boulevard had been in a conversation and a tried a program about 2 or 3 times. It just completely got shot down. Um, but the energy within our community of not only breakthrough thinking, but also a culture of equality was so powerful that moving towards this rename was, I wouldn't say easy, but it was the city was ready for it. Our community was ready for it. Our individuals that are trying to make impactful change were ready for it. And then not only that, they realized that they could actually make impactful change, that they could take an idea or they can take a vision or a passion and really start to do things that maybe in history, maybe previously before, were not so much within their line of sight. And so making sure that not only we're living purposely, we're also living generously and giving everything of who we are to those behind us. Because then not only does it create a culture of equality, that creates a legacy. And you heard David talk about that legacy, okay? Those planned gifts and how they leave legacies. And here is an opportunity of those, and that was an example of opportunity of some relentlessness in individuals to give back to others, to create those long-standing legacies. Next page, Dean, please. So then after we started talking about, and you move towards this action and you move towards this serve, and you'll see how all of these, love, you'll see how all of these are playing on tennis terms. Outside of ACT, which we purposely did that. But then we move into a conversation of love. And this is where it takes more of an empathetic angle at what's going on within your communities, within who you are, and within your world. Next page, please. So one of the things that we love to talk about, and one of the things that really stands strong with Arthur Ashe is, from what we get, we can make a living. From what we give, however, makes a life. When we started to pull together our purpose, our generosity, and then leaving that legacy that makes a life, we realized that we were doing something that we're always going to be remembered for. We may not be remembered by our names. We may not be remembered by specific things that we've done. But the fact that the Arthur Ashe Boulevard is now here in the city, that inspires individuals. That makes those that may have thought things were impossible possible. Next page, please. And so this is one of the things that we really talk about a lot in regards to living with intention, living with a perspective of intentionality. Every action that you do must be set with the urgent intentions of accomplishments. Everything that you do. So when you're getting out of bed and you're thinking to whomever you're thankful for that you're able to take another breath, and you put both of your feet on the floor, from that moment on, everything that you do must be met with an urgent intention of accomplishment. People told us that we would never be able to rename this boulevard. People told us it would be impossible. But we didn't wait for coronation. Even the greatest emperors crowned themselves. And what we mean by that is, once you find and live through your purpose, once you're living generously to give back to those as a responsibility, then you live with an intentionality that everything you do has an urgent intention of accomplishment. I tell my students all the time, don't wait to be president of an organization. Be president now. Carry yourself in a way that when people see you doing certain things, or when something actually gets into your hands and you are the president of a organization, they're not surprised by it. If you wait for someone to give you this coronation and say, okay, now you're ready, you're way too late. And then you're also waiting for individuals to give you the okay when they are ready for you to make change. So don't wait for a coronation. Even the greatest emperors crown themselves. Find out what you're purposeful about. Find out what you're passionate about. Align that with an effort of living generously, and then go out and make change now. There's no reason why you can't rename a boulevard. There's no reason why you can't adjust or attack what's happening in our society now from a social unrest standpoint. There's no reason why you can't make a difference in education reform. There's no reason why you can't make a difference in criminal justice reform, equality. There's no reason why you can't make a difference within your organization regarding LGBTQ. There's no reason why you can't make a difference in being a voice for those that are afraid to have a voice or uncertain to have a voice. We have families within our Christori Richmond High School that do not speak English. They're afraid to talk to us because they think that maybe somehow, some way, we're going to ask for some type of identification that will hurt them in regards to their success here in the US. So they don't trust us as much. So we now have to be those voices. We have to now step in and make some of those changes. We can't sit back and wait, because then it'll be too late. So out of all the years that it took to rename the boulevard, we started that project. It was a year ago. It was released that we did it. Probably 6 months prior to that, we dove into this. And I'm not from here. I'm a come here. But I came here with the intention of making a difference. I came here understanding that I was brought here from a higher reason, not knowing why, but I'm here. And what am I going to do to make a difference in the community around me? So when you talked to my wife and said, we're going to sell our boots in, and here are some of the things that we need to be doing. So when you hear from Deanna and you heard from David about the messaging and the message and fundraising, one of the things that you have to identify is, and Dean made a great challenge to us by putting those nonprofits in there. Find out who's doing some of the things that you're passionate about and get involved in them. That's the first thing I did when I got here in 2015, was find out who in the city is doing things that are important to me. Coming from a low-income environment, living in projects like Creighton Court, I wanted to make a difference from that. Understanding that Dino was the first male professor educator that I ever had, I wanted to make a difference in that. So I started to involve myself with organizations that felt and fit that model. And then I went in to make change. And some other things that we've talked about along this is, yes, there's an opportunity to sit on boards. Yes, there's an opportunity to contribute from a financial standpoint, but there's also an opportunity to commit to things from a passion standpoint. You just want to be involved in things. And when you also think about those financial commitments, they don't have to be the 6-figure commitments. They don't have to be the 5-figure commitments. They can be the 2-figure commitments. Whatever you have that you can do, that you can give, do those things. Ultimately, you'll get in a situation where those 2 figures turn into 4, turn into 5, turn into 6, turn into 8. But don't let that. And if you can't have any figures whatsoever, do this figure. Do that figure and give back. What other opportunities do you have from a knowledge standpoint? And David and Deanna talked about this in terms of how you can add to some of these programs and some of these nonprofits from here. What skill set do you have that you can bring to the table? What are some of these organizations looking for? They're looking for a social media expert, that they need someone just to come in and do some of those things that help lift that. Or they're looking for someone that is maybe a grant writer, that you have some skills in that you can add to that, where you maybe couldn't do anything financially. So don't wait. Don't think you have to be in a certain situation or a certain level to be able to start to make change. The responsibility is on you. And that's what's exciting, is because you have the ability, you have the tools and the skills to go out and make change. and do it now. Why wait? It's important for us to start to think about that. So next page thing. So one of the things that I love to do as I start to give out presentations and do things, I always give you takeaways. And these takeaways can hit you immediately. They may not hit you until 5 weeks from now. They may never hit you. But these are things that I think that are important as you start to get into your nonprofit world, as you start to follow your purpose and your passion, giving generously, and then intentionally making change now, not waiting for coronations. These are some of the things that I think that are important to you. Number one, scale up your talents. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Okay, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, involve yourself in circles that are bigger than you. There's a saying, make company of good men and you'll increase their number. Make company of good women and you'll increase their number. Number two, focus on the moment. You can't change the past, you can't predict the future. Again, change is now. Focus on the moment, find out what you can do with that moment, and then adjust that moment. Number three, opinion versus reality. Don't worry about what someone's opinion of you is. Okay? You dictate that. You own that. So whether someone thinks of a certain way about you, that's their opinion. You know what the reality is and what your capabilities are, what your talents are, and what your passions are. Number four, teach only what you believe. Borrowed ideas have no passion. Make sure you're aligned with something that is innate in you. Make sure you're aligned with something that you truly successfully believe in, so that it's easier for you to teach. It's easy to talk about things that you believe than something that is borrowed. Number five, value humility above all. Those that drink the water must remember those that dug the well. Make sure you say thanks. Make sure you give others their pat on their back. Make sure you talk about and support those that have given and went above and beyond, that need to be attention brought need attention brought to them. Number six, self-reflect and self-reflect often. This will continue identifying what you're purposeful about. This will continue making sure that you are being generous in your commitment to others. And then also it'll keep you on track to make sure that you are intentional about your actions. Again, don't wait for a coronation, right? You have to make sure that you're challenging yourself enough so no one can point the finger at you, because you're always self-reflecting. Number seven, fail and fail and fail again, no matter what it is. All right. No matter if you've joined a nonprofit as a board member and then you just couldn't commit to the requirements of the board, or you're missing meetings and you're doing this, learn from each of those opportunities. Don't spread yourself too thin. Make sure that you're constantly learning from every single failure that you have, because that's going to make sure that you improve in the next board seat that you get, the next nonprofit that you join, or the next organization that you become a part of. Number eight, grow your social capital. Social is the people you surround yourself with. Capital is the value they add to you. So you want to make sure you're surrounding yourself with people that add value to you and who you are. For instance, you're never going to know everything about everything. I don't know everything about fundraising, but you know what? David is in my circle now. So whenever I have a conversation about fundraising, I'm going to pull David in, because that's going to increase my social capital. Never be afraid to say, I don't know, but let me pull in my friend David, because I know he is an expert in this field and he'll be happy to add into this conversation. That grows your social capital, and it begins to showcase your ability to connect with those that know more than you, but also the reality in that you don't know everything. Nobody wants to know it all. They want folks that, you know what, let me get back to you. Let me reach out to David and I'll get back to you in some of those. You should never have an answer to everything. Number 9, put it in the universe. If you want to be on a nonprofit board, talk about being on a nonprofit board. If you want to be a president of an organization, talk about being a president of an organization. Start to put it in the universe. This is something that I learned from one of my admins years ago, and she would always, everything that I would think that I wanted to do, or she would say, put it in the universe. And if you talk it up, enough, you will see opportunities that will fall right into your lap because of it. And lastly, number 10, mental, physical health. Dean, I love your shirt. Dean is always one of those individuals that is keenly connected to everything that's going on. And he and I are in a lot of different programs and partnerships that we're doing. But the reason why I want to identify this is because of Chadwick Boseman, who we lost last night due to cancer, colon cancer. And so I always end with this slide because you can't be 100% at anything you do if you're not mentally in check, if you're not physically in check, if you're not emotionally in check. Take care of yourselves, get your regular physicals, go do the things that you need to do in the areas of your life that you need to take care of so that you cannot have to worry about some of those things. Chadwick Boseman was 43 years old. The inspiration he brought to us from the movie Black Panther, from a Black individual, and how it touched every societal thing that's going on in this world, empowered a community so strongly because we believed that we were better than what we've been told that we were. It's unfortunate that he is no longer with us, but it's great that he gave us some inspiration. And all I ask for you is take personal days, take mental health days, spend time with your family, focus on yourself, and make sure that you are healthy from those aspects because they're going to hold you back from anything you want to do, whether it's nonprofit, whether it's your career, anything whatsoever. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself. I give you those top 10. You can take them and put them in your back pocket, pull them out whenever you need them, reference them as much as possible. But ultimately, the main three takeaways is live purposely, live generously, and live intentionally with an action to give back to others. Why wait for a coronation? Even the greatest emperors crown themselves. Thank you. That's it. That's it. The next slide, Dean, is Q&A. So I am open to any questions or comments. Dean, you want to start to tee that off?
Yeah, absolutely. Here, I'm gonna make sure okay, I got my video on and all that. It's really too bad that Dantris isn't very passionate. So I apologize to everyone. There was many things that you said, and trying to write down fast enough and still hit the slides was its own special challenge for me. There's something that you said that I really wanted to pick at a little bit. And that is, so this phrase that we sometimes hear, living generously. Mm-hmm. People get very hung up on the word generously because they hear living generously and whether it's that phrase or whether it's similar phrases to it, we get very hung up on I don't have that much to be generous with. Or it's being very insular, and you mentioned it, whether it's about the number of figures from a monetary value that you can give or whatnot. People get very hung up on this, like, am I doing enough? And so they end up paralyzed. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes. And what I was going to get at, what I loved about what you're saying here, is that the emphasis is yes, generously should be the given, but really what we need you to do is align the living part.
Right.
And right. That's one thing I thought I just wanted to kind of pick at that because I think that is something that whether that's what you're expressing when you're talking to your friends, whether you're spreading that awareness, whether it's what you're talking to your employer. And I love that one of the very first, the Arthur Ashe quote that you gave, about not surpassing others, but to serve others. It's like if you live that, then the generous is going to come.
It's part of it.
Yeah. So at any rate, I don't want to speechify on your talk, but I just thought that's a great point because I think we get very hung up, whether it's a young professional or somebody who's new into an area, that's to come here, this idea that like, well, I don't know that I have as much to give as all these people already giving.
Right.
But that emphasis to be on the living instead of that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I had to adjust to myself. And as I, go through this, I remind myself of that importance. It's, you know, because I struggled a lot with, I don't have the financial means to give to this or that. And so I never gave anything. And I didn't become a part of organizations because I didn't feel like I was in a financial situation to where that it would help. Then I realized that it's really not the amount. If it's a
Right.
dollar, it's a dollar you're giving. And one of the things that really brought this true was I'm on a number of different boards, and every board has to have 100% financial commitment from every member on the board. Some of those can give 5 figures, some of those can be 6 figures, some of those can be 1 figure. But it's the overall acceptance or understanding, David, when you're going into some of these fundraising conversations, our board, 100% of our board has committed to this organization. So then that changed my mentality there too, because then I realized I didn't have to give, I could give what I could give. And nothing's better when you're giving in that stretch frame, David, when you're giving in a situation where you really don't have a whole lot to give, but you're still giving from a financial standpoint, that is phenomenal. But then I said, okay, well, I've got all these other different types of talents that I can give that no one on our board has. And so how can I start to elevate that component of it? Whether it's the communication, whether it's the design, whether it's the marketing, whether it's the strategy, then as a board member, I can play in all of those buckets. And so my value actually becomes more important because if I'm from a communication, marketing, and design standpoint, I'm developing the pamphlets and the handouts that David's going to need when he's going out and meeting with these potential donors, right? I'm controlling the narrative of the message. Okay. So I'm living through this generosity standpoint because I'm living through that. And so it took me a while to adjust and I struggled being on boards a lot until I came to this understanding that there is a way that I can give. As long as I'm living through my purpose, I'm already giving generously. That's without question. Now, what can I do to support that?
That's perfect. I want to put it on everyone's view here. So I want to tie that actually into your comments about social capital too, because I think we undervalue our own connections to other people, and I think we especially do it in terms of nonprofits because it could be extra important for those nonprofits for you to be that Kevin Bacon that's however many degrees away from somebody that could really be vital to them. And I'll give everyone, I'm going to give you two, I'm going to give you a point of bit of homework as well as proof. Here's your bit of homework. There's no reason that everyone on this call shouldn't be linking in to myself and all of the presenters here because you now know us. You now have a connection to us. Talk about that the social capital is so important. And so here's that extra perspective to that. I'm on the development committee for SOAR 365. I guarantee you, I mean, unless some of these lottery tickets finally come through for me, whatever, I'm not going to be able to give as much as some people will be able to give to SOAR 365. But you know what one of the few things I'm good at is not shutting up and keeping a hold of my friends very, very tight. And you want to believe that's why today's happened, is because I saw, hey, I've got these folks that everyone should hear from and would really help inspire those who are young professionals themselves, who work with young professionals. And so that social capital for me was just knowing these people. It wasn't that I was going to be able to give all these speeches. It was about pulling those folks together. And I think that's a good example, though, too, because I think we tend to undersell our connection, or we think about them in very kind of black and white, like Excel ways of thinking of our connections, as opposed to that's a tremendous amount of help for the nonprofit who just said, you know what, I could use knowing a guy that knows anything about VR, and be like, man, I can make up lots of uses for it, but I know a guy, I can put you in
Yeah.
touch with, or
Yeah.
like
It looks like I may be frozen up.
I think it was Dean that froze up.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
lost Dean also.
so everybody kind of.
Okay. There we go. I think he's coming back now. I see the DB.
Welcome back.
Keep on if you can hear me.
Yeah. No. I think that's important, and all great points.
Well,
This city, this. You there? Can folks hear me?
I can hear you, Dantris. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so the city of Richmond is so connected, and David, and you folks will understand how connected 1 to 2 degrees away from everyone. And so being able to make that connection, being able to increase your social capital. Again, you don't have to know everything about everything, but you're connected to folks that you do, is important to navigate in regards to nonprofit, because the nonprofit boards and the nonprofit committees, they're a mishmash of individuals with different talents. You've
Right.
got an accountant, you've got a lawyer, you've got a designer, you've got a marketer, you've got a fundraiser. Everybody is pulling in from all these different communities in these sectors to create a legitimate board. So make sure that you're using and leveraging your connections.
Totally agree with that, Dantris. I just add, Richmond is extremely connected, as are many other places, but we don't always realize it, right?
Right.
So we get to be those catalysts who say, oh, I know about so-and-so. I mean, those connections, it's so much fun. It's a great part of, what we do, but it's a small town city with lots of connections, but I think it's really important for us to help unearth those connections and help people realize that they're there.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It looks like Dean is still. Let's see. I've got a message from Dean. Let's see here.
Well, Dean is frozen. I want to give a shout out to Dean for putting this together.
Absolutely.
So this kind of came about as part of the Next Generation Council that Dean is an advisor for. And so as our group of young professionals were meeting and talking about what is our purpose and why does this Next Generation Council exist in our community and what can we do, we came up with one of our pillars being fundraising, one being volunteering, and one being leadership. And how can we be leaders in our community? And Dean said, well, I know David, and I know Deanna, and I know Dantris. And we made this conference and brought in other young professionals and really, brought these people together for this great conversation. And thank you, Dean, for pulling this together and being our social capital and leading us to this amazing moment.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
I'm gonna jump in because I'm a second that. I think Dean has been in my corner since since 2017, 2018, and just an amazing individual. And one of the things I love is he will come up with an idea or a concept, and then he will know the exact people to bring together to make it reality, right? So, when you think about from a nonprofit standpoint, maybe if there isn't a nonprofit out there that you support, that you feel really aligns with you, take the Dean Brown approach and start it, find people that are aligned with that, and then make it a reality. Similar to what we did with the Arthur Ashe, we just decided to do it, those types of things. So, Dean, hats off to you. I think this is amazing. And, my social capital just continually increases with you, my friend.
Well, I tell you, there's very few things other than maybe like eating Southern food. My probably second favorite thing is just talking about my friends and connecting my friends. So also apparently getting a better internet connection is now the number 3 thing I need to do. So this is a good segue actually into opening it up to the three speakers with both Dantris and David and Deanna, which we did not intentionally do only D's, only D names. One of the things I wanted to put to all of you, because I actually builds right off of what Dantris just said a little bit, which is a lot of times, you're looking for something that might not exist yet, or might be two organizations. That actually there are ways for multiple organizations to connect with one another that I think can be really powerful. I'll give you all my 2-cent example was trying to connect SOAR closer with the Poe Museum, because Poe Museum has educational opportunities that could help many of the clients of SOAR in terms of just reading levels and things like that, and connecting literature in the city to SOAR. So at any rate, but there's some different ways that different organizations really can dovetail and not compete. It actually goes to Dantris's point about, not trying to surpass one another, but serve one another. I think there's connections that are obviously, between things like, SOAR 365, Special Olympics, things like that. But at the same time, these are organizations that often feel, maybe to the outside person, like they've got to be kept separate. But I think that might be one of the things too, as a piece of advice is, how can you find your passion? And if it's in two orgs, find a way to connect them in an interesting way.
No, I think that's a good point. I think there's a lot of people out there doing great work. So what I would urge folks to do is look at the landscape of what's out there now, find out who's doing what, and then find out an opportunity in which either your nonprofit can help support them, or you can piggyback off of what they're already doing. There's no reason to recreate the wheel. We went through a process with my LMR immersion group in criminal justice reform. And we found out that there's a lot of folks out there doing a lot of good things for re-entering citizens back into our communities. But there was a gap that we found that no one was touching. So then we just created a program that complemented the overall organizations. I typed one in there called the Real Life Program. And now we are a partner with them because we're providing something that they didn't have that helps enhance the success rate of returning citizens to our communities. So there are there are tons of folks out there doing things. Find out what everyone is doing, understand what they're doing, and then find out some opportunities in which your program or how you can partner with them could advance that message.
That's great. Any other thoughts on that, David or Deanna?
I don't have anything to add what Dantris said. That's exactly our approach too. And we have a lot of work to do in that arena with Special Olympics. You mentioned the potential connection with SOAR 365. Susan and I were touching on that. We've done some collaboration where there's a lot more we could do. And especially in our world, it would be about not unnecessarily duplicating services, but rather amplifying the ones that exist.
And I also think that there's a role for volunteers in this area, because a lot of times when you're in the organization day to day, you're really focused on, your goals, your area, and volunteers who might be connected to multiple organizations have that opportunity to bridge us. So that volunteer leaders in particular, when you get to know an organization, multiple organizations really well, you have the opportunity to sit at the table with folks within the organization and highlight some of those opportunities that we might miss because we're so deeply focused on our own area.
Yeah, and then just real quick, one last thing: nonprofits are nonprofit, right? So everybody's wearing a million different hats. Everybody's, trying to do a million different things. So if you can partner with somebody that is already doing something that can make it a lot easier for your organization, or you can plug into an organization that needs something, that this is an opportunity to do some great partnership as well.
That's great. That's great. We had a question from Carrie about some great networks to join. She's new in town. I'm assuming she's Richmond with that too. But what are some good networks to potentially connect in at? And I think part of that networking probably is both with other peers as well as learning about different organizations too. Anybody have any recommendations? I mean, I think scanning even things like Connect VA and some of the other social groups like that is a good one. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is, Carrie, I would identify, I don't know what your background and what your skill set is, but my background was in creative leadership, creative design. So I immediately connected with organizations within that here in town. So if you have a specific skill set, just start searching for some of those organizations, those communities, those meetups, those virtual meetups, those types of things that can start to help you get into some of those. It looks like some folks are typing in some organizations that connect businesses with nonprofits. But what helped me was I was a part of some design organizations that were throughout the US. One was particularly here in Richmond. I jumped into that. And then, my first job here when I moved here was with Capital One. I started to engage in conversations about what I was purposeful and passionate about. Toastmasters is great. Yes, Carrie, I was going to say that. So those are some of the things that I would do as well.
Well, and then depending if exactly, somebody just put BAFRI and AFP in the chat. That's what I was going to recommend. If you're in development, the Virginia Association of Fundraising Executives is a tremendous opportunity to network, as is the Association for Fundraising Professionals, AFP. So that's a great way. And even if you're not in development, it's a good way to come to visit one of their meetings. You'll meet people from a huge variety of organizations and get an idea of who's in the room and who's in town.
Yeah, the Chamber of Commerce has great young professionals groups as well, with lots of opportunities. What I did when I moved to Richmond from Northern Virginia is I also looked in my immediate community, my neighborhood, and that was a good way to sort of stay close to home. And those folks then helped me go further out. So that was a good initial group as well.
That's great. So, all right. So I've got two very leading questions, and then also please continue to ask some questions in the chat too, or speak up if you have any. Number one, if you had one piece of advice on how to help an organization or a cause that you care about today, what's one thing? And I'm gonna make the caveat of, let's say it's not about donating, but just one thing you can do. One piece of advice on one way that they can help an organization or a cause they care about today, what would it be?
Introduce a friend to why it's important to you. Just share your story. Somebody with your network.
Yeah, and I would just add to just find whatever organization that is, look at the leadership within an organization, see if you're connected. If you're not connected, find out what they're doing and then find out how you can participate in something that they're doing. If they're having a rally, if they're having a meeting, if they're having a food drive or something of that nature, go ahead and immediately say, I'm involved, I'm interested in helping this organization, and here is where I can add value. If you see from a social media standpoint they need more help, if you anything whatever is within your skill set that you can give to that organization, reach out to them and say that I want to help, and here is my skill set that I can add to that organization.
I was going to also say, know what your network is. So if you are one of those folks who's really plugged in on social media, make sure that you use that social network to promote what is close to your heart, whether it's a cause or an organization, because as you know, for better or worse, nowadays people get a lot of their information through social media. So make sure that you are capitalizing on that network that you have already built for yourself.
Yeah, and then I'll just add one other thing is, again, put it in the universe. And what I mean by that is when I got here, everyone that I talked to them about what I ultimately wanted to do within the city from a nonprofit standpoint. Just get it out there, because you don't know who they're connected to or how that conversation could go or things like that. Because ultimately you want folks to come to you and say, hey, I heard you're interested in this. Here's an opportunity, right? So continue that conversation whenever you're around someone and you get into conversation. Yes, I want to do nonprofit work for educational reform in the low-income communities of Creighton Court. Right. And then just continue to say that whenever you're around folks, and ultimately you will start to get pulled into those conversations, just as an example.
No, that's great. I think to build on that too, I think that it's tough, honestly. I think for some young professionals, this is one of the reasons why we're doing this today, is there's kind of this gap. You're kind of either you float, you might have gone to a couple fundraisers because the organization meant something to you, or maybe your friend introduced you to you. You might have volunteered a couple of hours, but then there's kind of this, I think sometimes it's a perceived gap more than it is a real gap between you and the organization and what you can do next. And so hopefully that's one of the things, today you've got some tools and some ideas of how to make some of those connections, but some of the committees that they might have, take a look at those. Too many times, and I say this, I'm guilty of it myself, in some organizations that I've been a part of have been guilty of it, where the committees tend to be made up of the people who hang around. I mean, they're the people who participate, which is great. But what they don't sometimes do is reach beyond that really well. And so you might be way more welcome than you think by knocking on some of the doors of those committees. Because that was my next thing was, okay, if that's what you can do today, how about what you could be doing in 6 months? What should you put out in the universe of what you're going to do 6 months from now? And I would say for any organization you care about, look at their committee structure, their volunteer committee structure, and knock on at least 2 doors. Talk to two people that are in that committee and express your interest, or at least an interest in how they operate. Any other thoughts about that from anybody?
No, I think you're point on with that, Dean.
Agreed.
Other questions anybody's got? Please feel free, if you'd like to, put on your camera, your mic, and ask yourself, or throw in the.
I think that Douglas Blair's observation is an important one, to keep life balance and focus. Particularly with our young professionals, lives are busy, crazy busy, and to everyone's point, Deanna's and Dantris's today, bring intent and intentionality to this part of your life as well, so that you can be engaged with something that matters to you in a way that matters to them, and not just. There's so many options, many of them really, really good, but I think that intentionality, that life balance. I heard that same feedback again when I spoke to some people on our young professionals board. They're like, "There's so much we want to do, but it's better for us to focus on this and really deliver, bring my A game more fully."
Yeah, and I'll add to that, because I'm like Dean in a lot of ways, not definitely as smart as him, but we say yes. We say yes to a lot of things.
Way smarter.
And a lot of times we are strapped with our capacity to commit 100%. Be careful in that. Choose your boards wisely. Choose your commitments wisely, so that you can truly make impactful solutions, strategies to any one of those organizations. And I've got to reevaluate myself, because there's some things that I'm on boards with and committees with, and it's really be smart about that, so that you can actually leverage your participation in these nonprofits or these boards to the best of your abilities. Don't overextend yourself. Feel okay to say no, and really do research on organizations before you commit to any of those, because some of them may look good on the outside, and then when you get in there, there's so much work, because there's only 5 people that are, actually running the organization. So be careful around some of those things.
Yeah, and not doing that homework in advance is just, it doesn't do anyone it doesn't help anyone. It's just it's an injustice to everyone involved, yourself and the organization. Well, to take back on your comment, Dantris, I just last night was having a conversation with a friend because I'm trying to brush up on my Spanish and learn the language again. And I told him, I said, there's a word I have trouble with, but I have trouble with it in English too. He said, what's, I said, no. Just cannot get it out. So it's an easy trap to fall into.
I have a little, just recently, personal experience with this. I just had a son in March and, working full time from home and just adjusting to a new life, as we all are nowadays. I had to reevaluate the things that I'm involved with and had to say, I had to step away from an organization that I've been involved with for a few years now. And it was a difficult decision. But again, I went back to my type A-ness and did a couple of pros and cons lists and realized that not only was it a good decision for me as an individual, it was a good decision for the organization itself, because I needed to step away so that someone who had more time to give to come in and do the work. And so it really is not only for your work-life balance and your mental health, but also the value to the organization by being honest of the capacity that you have.
Yeah, and I commend you for that, Deanna. That's true leadership there. We have to realize as leaders, we have to be able to say no. We have to be able to make sure that folks are getting the most out of our abilities. And as difficult as that conversation may have been, you're in a better situation and the organization is in a better situation. That's true leadership. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. I think the other element of that too, I think that people have to keep in mind, and this is a COVID comment because of where we're at right now. It is increasingly difficult to find the seam between when work stops and the rest of your life stops right now. And
there's no
where that was,
seam.
Dantris and I are spending, I should put out there, but Dantris and I are basically spending the entire weekend together on multiple projects, including this one. But point being, it is even easier to lose what makes you happy and what makes you drive every day in this haze of what's going on right now. So really, I think everyone has said is the intentionality, taking time for yourself, and as a part of that, taking that time is also just taking that time to understand what does make you happy and makes you drive and makes you serve. And make it, and sometimes that might mean that work has to sacrifice. Sometimes that means personal has to. But if you're doing it right, you start to make that space for what actually makes you happy, and you can do that evaluation. It's not easy. None of us are good at it. But I think that it's everything everyone is saying. I think is good for all time. But right now, it's especially crucial and hard, but really, really crucial from just a mental health reason.
Yeah, and I think, the only silver lining in the COVID-19 pandemic is that it has forced us to reevaluate those things. It has forced us to appreciate what's important in our lives. It has forced us to take care of ourselves. It has forced us to spend time with our family. And then it's also forced us to realize the time that we've been giving to other things that are not adding value to us. And so I think that your comment is pinpoint on, and I think that's going to change the dynamics moving forward in not only the workforce world, but the nonprofit world as well.
Yeah.
I was going to say too, this is also where it's important, make a 6-month goal. Because that's the other thing too, is we have a tendency, and do I have this tendency to scramble for right now. Make a 6-month goal with an organization you care about, or to find 1 or 2 organizations that you really care about. That you're going to do your homework, so that in the next 6 months you'll make those contacts. That putting that out there gives you some space, but it also lets you realize what is most important to you too. Any other questions or anything before we wrap up? The presentations are available. We did record this. which I think is going to be fantastic, just from like an evergreen standpoint. But I just want a sincere thanks to my friends, my colleagues who are a part of this. Seriously, this is amazing. And if everybody if you'd like to, let's open up your cameras or your microphones for a little bit of appreciation for our crew today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. I want to thank our sponsors, Dominion Energy and Tito's Vodka, which is, I got to say, that's the coolest thing to be able to say out loud.
Where's my swag bag, Dean?
How perfect is that for our young professionals thing? Also, you want to talk about things you can do? You are all honorary members of our Next Generation Council for SOAR 365. And we'll send you some information about the honk and cheer thing coming out and all that. But a big thank you to SOAR 365 for also providing the leadership to do this so that you can find organizations that you really care about and get to know us and other people more. We'll send you information about that honk and cheer thing as well. But thanks, everybody, so much for your weekend. And thanks, everybody.
I appreciate the
Thank
opportunity.
you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dean.
Be safe.
Thanks all.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Dean, I'll see you tomorrow, buddy.
Yeah, see you all day tomorrow.
We getting it in, man. We getting it in this weekend.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks, Dantris. Thanks.
All right,
Deanna.
David.
Thanks.
Thank you.
all.
You did
I
get your
appreciate
shirt,
it.
right?
Bye,
David,
everyone.
you did get your shirt, right?
One more time.
David, you did get your shirt, right?
I did. I've worn it many times. Thank you very much. I love it. I love it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Awesome. Take care, folks.
All right,
All
cheers.
right, thank you.
Bye.